Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today with a sound, or, well, actually the lack of a sound.
I think I know exactly where you're going with this.
Yeah, so picture this. It's 5:45 p.m. on the very last day of the fiscal quarter. The loading dock is wide open. You have a truck driver, let's call him Dave.
Naturally.
And Dave has been idling his engine for 45 minutes, and he is not happy. The logistics manager is standing right at your desk, just tapping a pen against your monitor, and everyone is waiting for just one thing.
The bill of lading or, the commercial invoice.
Exactly. They just need the paper. It's just a piece of paper, right?
Yeah.
But the printer is completely silent. It's that spooky silence. And you, sitting there as the SAP consultant, are frantically refreshing a spool request that just stubbornly says error. Or even worse, right? You're staring at a screen that says the output was successfully issued, but the printer is staring right back at you, doing absolutely nothing.
That is the specific, the absolute nightmare scenario we are dealing with today. Because it sounds so trivial, right?
Yeah.
Output, it's just printing. It's just an email. How hard can it actually be?
But as we found in the source material we have today, this is a massive, highly detailed troubleshooting guide titled SAPSDTOP50 tickets output.md. That silence is actually the entrance to a huge rabbit hole.
It's not even just a rabbit hole. I mean, it's a labyrinth. That silence, it could be a simple typo in a customer master record. Or it could be a catastrophic failure in the ABAP code deep in the system kernel.
Right.
It could be a permissions issue, a network firewall, or some obscure logic gate that you didn't even know existed.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We aren't just going to fix the printer today. We're going to take you, the listener, from the basic is it plugged in level all the way to let's debug the hexadecimal values in the driver program.
We're going from L1 support straight to L3 architect.
Exactly. We are covering the entire roadmap laid out in the source material. So we'll start with the 5-minute diagnosis, move into the structural skeleton of the configuration, then get into advanced debugging for when things get really hairy, and finally, we'll tackle the massive paradigm shift that is S/4HANA.
It's a journey from the functional to the technical and then straight into the future. And frankly, this is the exact stuff that separates the junior ticket routers from the true solution architects.
So let's unpack this. The source starts with a pretty major mindset shift. It calls it the 5-minute diagnosis. What is the golden rule here?
The golden rule, and I really cannot stress this enough, is when an output is missing, never guess.
Never guess.
Never. Because the SAP system is deterministic. It has a specific mathematical reason for everything it does or doesn't do. If you start changing settings blindly...
Yeah, just swapping out the printer name to see what happens.
Right, or you go, oh, let me try changing the partner function. When you do that, you're just adding noise. You're muddying the waters. You have to stop and ask the system why it failed.
And the source points us to a very specific tool for this. It literally calls it the Holy Grail.
It really is the Holy Grail. It's the output analysis tool. Now, for the functional consultants listening, you already know this path, but let's visualize it anyway.
Let's do it.
You're in transaction VS02 for an invoice, or VA02 for a sales order. You go up to the menu, you click Go To, then Header, then Output.
Okay, so walk me through this scenario. I'm in transaction VS02. I'm staring at the billing document. I follow that exact path, and I see nothing. It's a complete ghost town. My immediate instinct is to panic and start checking the local printer settings in Windows.
And that is exactly the wrong move. If that screen is empty, the printer doesn't even know you exist yet. The system hasn't even attempted to print. So you need to ask the system why it didn't propose anything in the first place.
And the source says there's a specific button for this, right?
Yeah, the analysis button. It's usually effectively hidden on the toolbar. Sometimes it's labeled determine.analysis. When you click that button, you aren't looking at the invoice anymore. You are suddenly looking at the brain of the system.
Wow. Okay. What does that actually look like?
It looks like a complex log. On the left side, you have your output procedure. Imagine a tree structure. It lists every single possible output type that could have triggered for that document.
So it lists things like RD000 ADA0000.
Right, exactly. And next to each of them, it gives you a status. And this right here is where people get lazy.
How so?
Well, they see a generic error at the top level and just give up. But you have to double-click. You have to expand the tree. The source actually highlights two specific results here that really confuse people. The first one is condition record exists but has not been set.
Which sounds completely contradictory. I found the record, but I'm ignoring it. Why would it do that?
Because this is the system being smarter than you. It found the rule, meaning you created the master data correctly in transaction VV31, but then it hit a requirement.
A requirement.
Yeah, think of a requirement as a bouncer at a nightclub. You have the ticket, which is your condition record, but the bouncer, the requirement, looks at your shoes and says, not tonight.
Ah, so it's not a bug at all, it's a feature. The system is explicitly saying, I see what you want to do, and I refuse to do it based on business logic.
Precisely. The source uses the example of requirement 062. Even if absolutely everything else matches perfectly, the system runs this little ABP routine. If the routine returns false, the output is entirely suppressed. It's a hard stop.
We'll definitely talk more about what Requirement 62 actually does later, because I know that's a huge one. But the main takeaway here is don't blame the master data if the gatekeeper is actively locking the door.
Exactly. Now, what about the second result you might see in that analysis, the one that says condition record is missing?
Yeah, that seems like the more common one. That just means the system searched through the access sequence and came up completely empty, right?
Right. An access sequence is just one of those classic SAP terms that sounds way more complicated than it actually is.
Yeah, it really does.
It's just a priority search list. Imagine you have a physical filing cabinet. First, you open the drawer, mark customer plus sales org.
Okay.
If that's empty, you close it and look in the drawer marked just sales org. If that's empty, you look in the general drawer. The system goes through these exact steps one by one. So if it tells you condition record is missing, it means it opened every single drawer you told it to open and found absolutely nothing.
So that implies to me that I either didn't create the record at all, or maybe I created it with the wrong key combination.
Exactly. You might have carefully created a record for customer A, but this specific sales order is for customer B. And the brilliant thing is, the analysis tool will show you exactly which fields it used to perform the search.
Oh, nice.
They'll literally say, I looked for customer 12345. And you go, oh, wait, I set up the master data for 12346. Mystery solved in 2 minutes.
So that is scenario A, the empty screen. Now let's talk about scenario B. The output is actually there. It's listed on the screen, but the traffic light status next to it is red.
Ah, the dreaded red light. This is a completely different beast. An empty screen means I didn't try. A red light means I tried, and I failed catastrophically.
And the immediate reaction from the business is usually, IT broke it.
Usually, yes. But here, you need to select the line with the red light and click the processing log button. The log will tell you exactly what happened during the attempt. The source lists a few classics here that we should definitely unpack.
Let's run through them. The first common one it mentions is output device not defined.
That's almost always a spool issue. Basically, the system successfully generated the document, it's fully formatted and ready to go, but it looks at the routing instructions and says, wait, I don't know which physical printer to send this to.
Is that typically a master data issue?
Usually, yes. It means the output device field in the condition record is blank. Or it could be a user profile issue, which we'll get to in a minute. But effectively, the envelope is perfectly addressed, but there's no stamp.
Okay, next red light error from the source. Archive, not possible.
Now, that one is specific to optical archiving. A lot of companies, especially heavily regulated ones in Europe, have a strict legal requirement to store a digital copy of every single invoice in a secure archive server.
Like an OpenText server or something similar.
Exactly. So the output is configured to try to print the paper and archive the digital copy at the exact same time.
So what happens if the paper prints fine, but the archive fails?
If the link to the archive server is down, maybe the server's rebooting or the API password expired, the whole output turns red. It's designed to say, I couldn't complete the full mission, so I'm flagging an error.
That is really tricky because the paper might literally be sitting on the printer tray.
Right. You might walk over, see the paper, and think, oh, it worked perfectly. But the SAP system is screaming failure because the digital compliance copy failed to save.
Wow. Okay, and the third common error the source calls out, user has no processing authorization.
That's a straight-up permissions issue. This specific user who is clicking, let's say it's a junior billing clerk, doesn't have the back-end security rights to actually trigger the print job.
So they can save the invoice, but they can't print it.
Right. Maybe they don't have authorization for that specific output type, like RD00, or maybe they lack authorization for that specific warehouse printer. The system knows what to do, but it says you aren't allowed to tell me to do it. Access denied.
Okay, so that's the 5-minute diagnosis. You check the analysis button if the output is missing, or you check the processing log if the output is red. It sounds so simple, but I bet 90% of L1 and L2 tickets can be solved just by actually executing those two specific steps.
I would honestly say 95%. Most people skip the diagnosis entirely and go straight to fixing things that aren't actually broken.
Let's assume we did the diagnosis. The analysis told us condition record is missing. The source now moves us into segment 2, validating master data.
This is the foundation of the whole house. If you don't have accurate master data, you do not have automation, period.
And for context, we are primarily talking about transactions VV11 for sales orders and VV31 for billing documents.
Right. And you would be genuinely surprised how often these massively complex escalation tickets turn out to be just bad data maintenance.
The source lists 3 key checks for master data. The first one seems so obvious, but I bet it catches people out constantly. Validity dates.
All the time. I call this the Cinderella error.
The Cinderella error. I think
Yeah, you get an angry ticket saying, this worked perfectly yesterday.
Yeah.
Nothing changed in the system. SAP is broken. And you calmly go check the condition record in VV31, and you see that the valid date was yesterday, December 31st. The record literally expired at midnight. The clock struck 12, and the carriage turned back into a pumpkin.
And the user swears they didn't touch anything?
And technically, they are right. They didn't touch anything. But the data had a built-in expiration date. This happens constantly at the turn of the fiscal year. Companies set up pricing and outputs for a specific year and just completely forget to extend the dates.
Okay, the second check is release status.
This one is more subtle. When you are doing mass creation of condition records, sometimes they get created in a blocked or draft status. It's exactly like writing a long email but accidentally leaving it in your drafts folder.
Right.
It's technically there. It exists in the database. But the system completely ignores it during determination because you haven't explicitly flagged it as released.
And the third master data check, which the source actually goes into quite a bit of detail on, is a communication method.
This is incredibly critical. You have to go into the condition record detail and then click over to the communication tab. This is where you actually tell the system how to send the output. Is it going to a physical printer? Is it an email? Is it an EDI IDOC?
The source mentions a really interesting scenario here called the yellow status trap. Can you explain the mechanics of how an output gets stuck in yellow?
The yellow status trap. This is a classic. So typically an output is either green for success or red for failure. Yellow just means processing. Usually it stays yellow for maybe a fraction of a second while the printer warms up.
It's transient.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But imagine you have a condition record. You set it up perfectly. But in that communication tab, you accidentally left the output device field completely blank.
Okay, so I didn't tell it which printer to use.
Right. So the system triggers the output and thinks, okay, no specific printer specified here. I'm smart. I'll just check the user's personal settings to see if they have a default. So it looks at the user's profile transaction SU3, specifically parameter NDR.
Okay.
But if that user also hasn't set a default printer in their SU3 profile, the system is just stuck. It cannot print, but it doesn't technically have a hard error because nothing broke. It just hangs there in yellow status forever.
It's just sitting in purgatory.
Exactly. It's essentially saying, I'm fully prepared to print this whenever you tell me where to send it, but you never tell it. So if you see a yellow status that never ever changes to green or red, go immediately to the communication tab or check the user's SU3 profile.
That is such a great tip. All right, let's level up our troubleshooting. We've done the diagnosis, we validated the master data, everything looks absolutely perfect. But the output still isn't triggering. The source says this is where we move to configuration verification. We're essentially checking the skeleton of the system now.
Now we are entering the realm of the functional consultant or the solution architect. This is the structural stuff in SPRO, the implementation guide, that end users can't see and can't change.
The first structural check the guide mentions is procedure assignment.
This is the bridge. On one side of the chasm, you have your business document, let's say an F2 invoice. On the exact opposite side, you have your output procedure, let's say it's V10,000er. You have to explicitly link them together in configuration.
And if that config link is missing,
then the system is totally brain dead regarding output for that document type. It doesn't even know it should be looking for outputs. No matter how much perfect master data you create in VV31, if the F2 invoice isn't mapped to a procedure in SPRO, absolutely nothing will ever happen.
it's like buying a really nice lamp and a bulb, but never actually plugging the lamp into the wall outlet.
And then submitting a high-priority ticket, wondering why the light switch doesn't work. It happens way more often than you think, especially when a business decides to create new custom document types. They copy the standard document type ZINV from F2, but they forget to copy the output procedure assignment table.
Right, a partial copy. The next point in configuration is partner function consistency. The source uses a rush order example here that I found really, really interesting. Can you walk us through that specific scenario?
This is a classic architectural gotcha that drives consultants crazy. So every single output type, let's say our invoice output, RD00, is explicitly configured to target a specific partner function. Usually for a billing document, you want to send that to the bill to party, which is BP, or the payer, PY.
Makes total sense. You send the bill to the specific partner who pays the bill.
Right. But sometimes configuration is just lazily copied and pasted from somewhere else. Let's say a consultant sets up an output to send to the sold to party, SP.
Mhm.
Now, imagine a rush order scenario. In a lot of business setups, a rush order is basically a cash sale.
Yeah.
The customer is physically standing at the counter. So you might only enter a ship to party, or maybe just a generic one-time customer master. You might not strictly have a distinct sold to partner defined on that document header in the same way you would for a standard order.
I see exactly where this is going.
Yeah. So the output attempts to trigger. It checks its configuration and says, I'm required to send this to the sold to party. Then it looks at the rush order document and says, well, there is no sold to party listed here.
And it just fails.
It fails completely silently. It just says, I have no valid recipient. It doesn't throw a dump. It doesn't give a red light. It just bypasses the output determination entirely. So as an architect, you have to ensure that the partner function your output is targeting is actually guaranteed to exist on the specific document type you're using.
That is a really subtle one. It proves you really have to deeply know your document structure. You have to know your partner determination procedures inside and out.
You really do. You have to understand the entire data model of the transaction, not just the isolated output settings.
Now, we mentioned the silent killer earlier, requirement routines. Transaction NZ, we touched briefly on requirement 62. Let's really dig into that now because the source uses it as the prime example of silent failures.
Yes, VOFM routines. For the technical folks, these are little snippets of custom or standard ABAP code that execute before the output is even allowed to be proposed. They are hard logic checks.
So requirement 62, the description is bill doc, release to accounting. Why is this specific one so incredibly important?
Because it enforces standard accounting best practices, but it causes so much operational confusion. Think about the standard business process. You generate an invoice in the SD module sales and distribution. But logically, until that invoice is officially released to financial accounting FI, meaning until it actually hits the general ledger, it's not really a final legally binding document.
Why not?
Because if it hasn't hit accounting yet, you can still cancel it incredibly easily in SD. You might review it and find a pricing mistake. You might just delete it.
So you absolutely do not want to physically send a PDF to the customer if the invoice hasn't hit your own financial books yet.
Exactly. Imagine sending a $10,000 invoice to a customer, and then someone in back office deletes it in your system. The customer pays it a week later, and your finance team has absolutely no record of why this cash just arrived. That is a total financial compliance disaster.
Right.
So, to prevent that, Requirement 62 actively checks the status of the invoice header, which is table VBRK. Specifically, it looks at the field RFBSK, which is the release status. If that status is anything other than C, meaning completed and posted to accounting, the ABGAB routine just returns false.
And the output just waits.
It waits patiently. It does not pop up an error message for the user saying, hey, I'm waiting for accounting. It just sits there, completely suppressed from the output screen. But the very second that accounting block is cleared, maybe the finance controller reviews and approves it, boom, the output triggers automatically in the background.
That explains so many frantic support tickets. The user says, I created the invoice, why didn't it print? And the consultant asks, well, did you release it to accounting? And the user says, no.
And there you go. And usually, the SD user doesn't even know about the accounting block. They just see the missing output and immediately assume the local printer is jammed or broken. They don't realize the finance controller deliberately put a credit block on that specific customer.
So the system is actually working perfectly. It's protecting the user from making a massive compliance mistake, but the user perceives it as a technical bug.
That is essentially the story of being an SAP consultant, isn't it?
It really is.
Okay, we are moving into the deep water now. Segment 4 in the guide, Advanced Debugging. The source describes this explicitly as the hands-on expert level. This is where we take off the functional consultant hat and put on the ABA developer hat. Because sometimes the analysis screen is just too vague. Sometimes it outright lies. Sometimes you just have to drop down and look at the matrix.
Let's get our hands dirty then. Scenario 1. The analysis screen was vague. We need to go straight into the code. The source calls this debugging determination. Where do we even start?
You have to catch the system in the exact act of thinking. We need to look directly at the pricing and output engine. The core program for this is SAPLV.com.
SAPLV.com, that sounds a bit ominous.
It's the master function pool for both pricing and output determination. And here's a really fun fact. Output determination basically just reuses the core pricing engine source code. It's the exact same condition technique logic. But the specific function module you want to find inside that pool is called messaging.
Messaging, okay. So walk me through the exact steps for a listener who maybe hasn't done much A/B debugging.
Sure. You go to transaction SE38 or SE80. You bring up the program SAPLV.com. You search for the function module messaging. And you set a session breakpoint right at the very top of the module, usually just by clicking in the left margin until that little red stop sign icon appears.
And then what?
Then you leave that window open, and you go back to your business transaction, let's say VSO2. You make a dummy change, or just hit the Save button. The SAP screen will suddenly freeze, and the debugger interface will pop up.
Okay, I'm in the debugger. What am I actually looking for? What is the smoking gun here?
The smoking gun is a specific internal table called XNAST.
XNAST.
Right. NAST is the actual transparent database table that permanently stores output records. XNAST is the temporary in-memory version of that table used during runtime. It is literally the system's proposed to-do list for outputs.
Okay, so when the code first starts running, this XNAS list is probably completely empty, right?
Exactly. It's a blank slate. As you press F5 and slowly step through the lines of code, you will watch the system evaluating your condition rules in real time. Does the customer match? Yes. Does the material match? Yes.
And if it successfully finds a complete match,
You will see a brand new row get appended into that XNAS internal table right before your eyes. Boom. RD00 is added to the list.
but what if I step through the entire messaging module and when I reach the end, XNAST is still completely empty?
Then you know with absolute 100% certainty that the determination logic failed. You can see exactly which line of code rejected it. Maybe you checked a highly specific field value you didn't even know existed, or very commonly, maybe there's a custom user exit, some bespoke code that a developer wrote 5 years ago that is just blindly deleting the output before it can trigger. You literally catch it red-handed.
That is incredibly powerful. It takes all the guesswork out of the equation completely.
It does. It moves you from saying, I think it's broken, to, I know exactly line 452 is where it fails.
Okay, now let's look at scenario 2, debugging processing. So in this case, the output was successfully determined. It was an XNAST. It shows up on the screen, but it turned red. The actual print program crashed.
This is a total different beast. Now, you don't care about determination. You need to debug the driver program. This is the custom or standard program that actually gathers the data and generates the PDF or formats the email payload.
How do I even find out what the assigned driver program is for my output?
You go back to transaction NACE, you select your specific output type, and you click on the folder called Processing Routines. It will list the program name, usually something like RV80 and 01 for invoices, and it will also list the form routine, which is almost always called entry.
So I assume we go set a breakpoint exactly there.
Correct. You open SE38, type in R80N01, find the block of code labeled form entry, and set your breakpoint.
Now, here is a trick from the source document that I absolutely love. How do you actually trigger this debugger to launch without having to manually create a whole new dummy sales order from scratch? Because in a production environment, you can't just create fake financial documents to test with.
Oh, this trick is a total lifesaver. You just go into VSO2 for your existing document, go to the output screen, select the specific row with the red failed output, and click the Repeat Output button. It creates a yellow duplicate. Then you just click Save.
And because you're repeating it, the system tries to process it again, hits your breakpoint, and you're instantly in the debugger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are perfectly replaying the crime scene without creating any new master data or financial postings.
What are we specifically watching for when we step through the driver program?
You are watching for the return codes, specifically the system variable subautark.
Can you explain SciSub just briefly for any non-coders listening?
Sure, it's a global system variable in ABAP that simply tells you if the very last command executed successfully. A value of 0 means absolute success. Anything else, a 1, a 4, an 8, indicates some kind of error or failure.
So where in the driver program do we look for it to fail?
You step through the code until you see it call the actual layout engine. It'll call a function module like OpenForm if you're using legacy SC script, or it'll call a dynamically generated SmartForm function module. Immediately after that specific call finishes, you check the value of CSUBRIC.
And if it's not 0,
If you see CSUBRIC equals 1 or 4 right after a SmartForm call, it means the form itself blew up internally. Maybe there's a bad formatting error or a divide by 0 calculation error hidden inside the form logic, or maybe the form name configured in NACE doesn't even exist in the system. The driver program catches that critical error from the form and flips the output traffic light to red.
So the red light on the output screen is really just the messenger. The actual crime scene is buried deep inside the form layout itself.
Precisely. The driver program is just reporting back saying, hey, I tried to run the form layout you gave me, and the form threw a massive error.
This is amazing, deep stuff. And there is always a huge... But in SAP, the whole landscape is changing. We have to talk about the elephant in the room, or rather, the massive S/4HANA system in the room.
Yeah, the great paradigm shift.
Because everything we just discussed, condition records, transaction NACE, the NAS database table, the messaging module, this has been the absolute bedrock Bible of SAP SD for over 20 years.
Literally since the early R3 days. It is deeply ingrained muscle memory for all of us.
But the source material throws a massive curveball in Segment 5, the S/4HANA shift. It says S/4HANA introduces a major fork in the road for output management.
It's not just a simple fork, it's a completely different operating system for outputs. We have NAST, which is the legacy way we just spent all this time talking about. Then we have BRF plus CAP.
BRF plus CAP, Business Rule Framework Plus.
Exactly. The new output management framework.
So does everything we just discussed just go straight out the window if you upgrade to S/4HANA?
Well, not necessarily. S/4HANA actually supports both frameworks simultaneously. But you have to know which one is currently active for your specific document type.
I have heard absolute horror stories of seasoned consultants trying to set up outputs in S/4HANA using NACE, getting everything perfectly right, and the system just completely ignores them.
Well, I've seen it happen multiple times. You spend hours meticulously creating records in VV31. You run the debugger, everything looks flawless. But the system is acting like a rebellious teenager. It is completely ignoring the old rules because it's exclusively listening to BRF plus S.
How do we as consultants actually know which world we are living in?
You have to go check the master switch. There is a very specific configuration node in SPRO under cross-application components, then output control. You go there and check the activation status for the specific application object, like billing document.
And if that switch says application active,
Then you are officially in the BRF plus world. All your hard work in ACE, all those condition records in VV31, entirely ignored. The system won't even glance at them.
that is genuinely terrifying if you don't know to look for it. So assuming we are living in a BRF plus world, what transaction actually replaces NC?
A completely new transaction called OPD, Output Parameter Determination.
And looking at the screenshots provided in the source guide, this interface doesn't even look like traditional SAP anymore. It looks like a web-based Excel spreadsheet.
It's basically a massive grid. In BRF plus Phi, instead of individual condition records, you maintain what are called decision tables. It is much more visual and tabular.
And what are the key columns in these decision tables?
The standard setup has 4 key decision columns. You have output type, the receiver, the channel meaning print, email, or XML, and finally the form template. You configure your business logic simply by filling in the rows of this spreadsheet-like table. For example, a row might say, if billing type is F2, use output RD00, send to the BP role via the print channel.
I mean, honestly, it sounds a lot simpler and cleaner.
Visually, it is much more logical, but functionally, it is incredibly unforgiving. The source mentions a huge gotcha with BRS Plus regarding master data integration.
Yes, the strict integration with business partners.
In the old NAST world, you could honestly be a bit sloppy with customer master data. You could have a customer record that was only half finished, missing some fields, and the output might still successfully print.
Right, NAST was pretty tolerant.
But BRF Plus, it is natively, strictly integrated with the new business partner, or BP, data model. If the BP role for customer isn't fully and perfectly maintained, if the address data model isn't right, if the standard language key is missing, BRF Plus simply says, I don't know who this entity is, and it fails.
It just hard fails.
It hard fails. It is vastly stricter than the legacy system. It absolutely forces you to have pristine master data governance.
So in an S/4HANA implementation, master data quality is even more critical than it was before.
Exponentially more critical. If you migrate garbage data into S4HANA, BRF Plus will simply refuse to generate any outputs.
Wow. We have covered a massive amount of ground today. Functional diagnosis, structural config, deep ABIP code, and the S4ANIA transition. The source guide actually wraps up with a consultant's cheat sheet. It's a rapid-fire list of common gotchas. I want to run through these quickly because these are the exact scenarios that make you look like an absolute hero if you can spot them immediately on a client call.
Let's do it, in me.
Issue 1, the output is completely ignored. The determination analysis says requirement 003 not met.
A classic. Requirement 003 typically checks two things. Is the net value greater than 0, or is the document logically complete? If your invoice is for $0, maybe it's a free sample delivery, or if the sales order is missing a mandatory field and is incomplete, this standard requirement intentionally blocks the output. Just check the document's net value.
Issue 2, email fails. You have a red light, and the processing log explicitly says email address not found, but you know the customer has an email.
You have to go straight to the BP master data. Having an email address typed into a random field isn't enough. The standard communication method radio button must be set specifically to email or INT. You have to explicitly tell the system, use this specific address as the primary routing method.
Issue 3, wrong printer. The output is printing successfully, but it's coming out of my little local desk printer instead of the massive high-volume warehouse printer.
That is the curse of Logo, LOCL. Go check your own user profile and transaction SU3. If you have the default printer parameter NDR explicitly set to Logo, that personal setting will completely override the warehouse printer setting configured in the condition record. Just delete that parameter from your profile.
Issue 4, no print immediate. The output triggers, but it just stays yellow. It never prints until someone manually runs the rsnast fan0 batch job at the end of the day.
That's the dispatch time setting. In your master condition record in VV31, the dispatch time field is probably set to 1, which means send with periodically scheduled job. Just open the record and change it to 4, which means send immediately when saving the application. This happens all the time when users manually create records and forget to change the default.
And finally, issue 5, PDF preview fails. The user tries to look at the invoice on screen and gets an error saying device type does not support PDF.
That is fundamentally a basis issue. The specific logical printer defined in transaction SBA doesn't have a PDF converter assigned to it. You need to have the basis team update the device type to something like PDF1 or SWINE that natively supports PDF generation.
So there you have it. A completely comprehensive roadmap for my printer is broken all the way to debugging the ABA memory tables and navigating the S4ANA BRF Plus framework.
It really is an incredible journey through the architecture.
As we wrap this up, I keep thinking about the distinction the source material makes at the very beginning. Deeply following these analytical steps is exactly what separates a ticket router. Someone who just logs the issue, maybe restarts the server, and passes it on from a true solution consultant.
Absolutely. The ticket router guesses. They try random things and just hope the error goes away. The solution consultant stops and asks why. They methodically look at the determination analysis. They step through the ABIP code. They deeply understand the structural architecture of the problem.
The source actually ends by offering a really provocative thought. It presents a choice for the future. It asks, are you comfortably clinging to the old familiarity of NICE, or are you actively ready to master the new logic of decision tables in OPD?
And it's a totally valid, necessary question. The industry is rapidly moving. S/4HANA is the definitive destination. Yes, ITSI is comfortable. We've all relied on it for 20 years. But if you aren't proactively learning BRF Plus and how decision tables function right now, you are rapidly becoming a legacy asset. You're going to be the guy who knows how to fix the typewriter in an office full of computers.
That is a pretty heavy thought to leave our listeners with. The core tools are fundamentally changing. The question is, are we changing with them?
Always be learning. It's the only way to survive in this ecosystem.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into SAP SD output troubleshooting. We hope that the next time you see that dreaded red light in VFSO2, you don't panic. You just smile, crack your knuckles, and say, I know exactly what to do.
Happy debugging, everyone.
See you on the next deep dive.